Hello and welcome to the Academy of Powerful Caregivers presented by Kevin Shorter. This is Module 1, The Motivation of a Caregiver. Today's lesson is how relationships can help you.
Hey, welcome back to the Academy of Professional Caregivers. I'm Kevin Shorter. Last lesson we looked at was how not to burn out. And one of the main principles that we spend a lot of time on is how relationships can help you not to burn out. And so this week we want to go even more in detail about relationships and how relationships can heal you and help you. That Kaiser study in 2006, where we've interviewed over 1,000 pastors, said that 70% of the pastors said they had no close friends. That's just really dangerous. It's dangerous for a lot of ways, whether it's burnout or even just making poor decisions and maybe even losing those ministries and relationships you've started because you don't have anyone in your life. We all make stupid decisions when we don't have people in our life. It's just what it is. We've got the enemy trying to isolate us and to pull in, to tell us lies and tell us lies about ourselves, about other people, thinking how either we're greater than we should be or we can do things that we shouldn't be able to do. And it all just makes sense in our head, and it's when we have those friends and relationships that we can draw them out and go, that was a stupid thought. And you can own up to it and confess it, and you can get better. And we'll get more into that. It's really important to have relationships. And as people who love God, you're always going to have people in your life. And so this is, just because you have people in your life doesn't mean you have friends. Let's put it that way. As you're a caregiver, people are actually going to be flocking to you, but not because they're your friend, but they can get something from you. Especially when you get, a lot of people we give care to are very needy, and they have stuff, they need what we have to offer, and we gladly give it to them, and they want to spend time with us, but don't think just because they want to spend time with us that they're really your friend. Because a friend is not going to just always be taking from you. Your friend's going to actually care about you as well and asking how you are and your needs and how they can help you. And so that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that good give and take of relationships so that you know who your real friends are. Yeah, if you're trying to get your friendships from the people you're giving care to and you feel significant because they want to be around you, and you have something to offer them, but they're not actually feeding into you and getting to know you and pouring into you, it's going to actually create an unhealthy view of yourself. If nobody takes the time to ask how you're doing, or you never offer how you're doing to other people, then you start believing that you are unimportant. And if you believe that you're unimportant, you're not a powerful caregiver anymore, but you're just as needy as the person you're giving care to, because you're actually giving care to them in order for them to feed your self-worth. So you need relationships and people in your life that would actually care to get to know you, so you're going to see, I am a valuable person, I am accepted, I am wonderful because God made me. He made me fearfully and wonderfully made. I have something of value to give. And I can see that as I communicate that with a friend, and they get to know me, they pull things out of me, and I do the same for them, then we can actually grow up and to be all that we're called to be. So when we actually move into the service of other people, we can be powerful because we're not needy in those situations, but we're powerful in those situations. And we need to make sure that we realize that we're important, and not because we're trying to be greater than the people we're dealing with. But, back to the passage where Jesus says we're to love others as we love ourselves. And it's like if we don't see ourselves as important, we're never going to see the other people as important as they should be. And so that's our goal. Our goal is to realize who God made us so we can be powerful, so we can call the other people into the powerful people that they're supposed to be and that God created them to be. And really, God created you because He thought you're important. If He put Himself into you and He put Jesus to die on the cross, He sees you as important. And yes, you can look at it as he sees everyone as important. So what does it really mean? It means that he sees you as important. He sees you as a valuable person, and he wants you to know who he made you to be. And if we have other people that are pouring into us as well as us pouring to them, then we actually start believing that we are important and that we are powerful. And so we need friends to do that. The Old Testament tells of the wonderful story of Jonathan and David. And so this is a wonderful relationship in the very end. It says, it talks about the how David wept when Jonathan died because he valued the relationship so much. But when they first meet after David kills Goliath. This is the first, at least, recorded story of hearing about it. And so you have David, he kills Goliath, and he chases off the Philistines. And then as he's running after all the Philistines with the rest of the Israelites, killing everyone, Saul asks, who is this guy, and who's his father? And nobody seemed to really know. And it's interesting because, anyway, they've met before. But it didn't really know. I think it was because he was so impressed by what had happened. He's like, I didn't know this was in you. What's going on? And so they invite David back in to report what's going on, who you are, what happened. And as David tells the story, Jonathan is there in the midst of it, and here's how God showed up for David. And Jonathan is like, I relate to this guy. This is my kind of guy. And if we look at several chapters before with Jonathan, Saul is chasing, trying to get the Philistines. They're up on or wherever they're fighting at the time, and they're up in this mountain. So the Israelites have bad battle, ground for fighting this battle, and they didn't know what to do. And Jonathan's turn to his armor bearer and say, "Hey, let's go up and to this battle, their camp." And we'll go there, and if they call us and invite us up there, we'll go up and we'll just destroy them. I mean, it's like a whole army is up there. It's just two guys that they're crawling up to fight them, and they get out and they kill everyone. They destroy, and then the Philistines are running out, and then everyone joins the battle, and the Israelites are so happy. But what happened was God showed up for Jonathan, and Jonathan, and both Jonathan and David had trusted God in a way that was, God had to miraculously come in and support them. And so they knew they understood each other. They had a common ground. And so when David tells his story, Jonathan's like, it says their hearts or spirits connected. They felt like they really understood each other, and they became one in spirit. And we know that that David also loved Jonathan. They became more alive having been together. They encouraged one another. This is even later on when David was running from Saul. He was getting to the point where he was really in despair, and Jonathan came and found him and encouraged him. And that was just the kind of relationship they had to encourage one another in the Lord, so that they were able to build their friendship off of something of significance. There's something of shared significance that they both had. And so as a caregiver, you often feel like that nobody understands you. You maybe have seen people die. You maybe have seen people do some horrendous things, either to the person you're caring for or the person you're dealing with has done it, and you've seen abuses done to children or to even parents. If say of the elderly care, they're just neglected put into a home and just left there. You might have seen something like that, or some marital abuse or cheating, or anything along those lines. You might have seen a lot of things. And some of it you just can't tell one another. Maybe it's some confidentiality that you can't even speak that to other people. But you need to be able to share with someone, maybe not the specifics of what's going through, but at least what's going on. And just being able to talk it over with someone, so you're not carrying the burden all by yourself. You're meant to have relationships. You're meant to have friendships. And that same study with all the pastors, 77% of pastors say they did not have good marriages. And that's just really a dangerous spot, and especially with marriages with your spouse, who's supposed to be really the closest person to you. You're supposed to be that intimate allies, one for another. You're fighting for each other. You're the people. Your spouse is the one who knows you the best. You're on this in your little close-knit family unit. They're the ones that are going to be with you. Said that, until death do us part. And so this is the person who cares the most for you. This is also the person who could hurt you the most in a lot of ways. But it says 77% of pastors do not feel like they had good marriages, and it's just dangerous. And if 70% don't have close friendships, they don't have close marriages, more than likely what they're saying is, I have no one. I have no one who knows me. And when God says it's not good for man to be alone, that's what he's getting at, is that isolation. And enemies he really wants to isolate us. And that's really has been his goal from the very beginning. He's trying to get us away from the body, away from friendships, and where we feel like that we're all by ourselves. And when we looked at Elijah last week, that was his complaint to God. He says that I'm the only one serving you. There's no one left. Everyone's abandoned you, but me. I'm alone. And God says there's 4,000 of those haven't bowed the knee to Baal. So I've kept some over there. You're not alone. But then what he does is gives Elijah some people that he can interact with, so he would not feel alone. And so our desire is to build relationships so we don't feel alone. And we know that we have someone who cares for us and knows us and knows when we're pain, and who would minister to us and not just us ministering to other people. There's 45 verses in the Bible about one another, that we're supposed to bear one another's sins, encourage one another, love one another, all these different things we're supposed to do. So you see that, the service aspects is so important to God. And as caregivers, powerful caregivers, we're doing this probably really well. We're doing this for other people. But at the same time, when we're talking about friends, we're talking about relationships, we really need people to do that to us. And there's people out there who want to. There's people out there who are willing, but we need to actually open ourselves up in such a way that we're actually requesting help from other people. And again, as we talked about the burnout, one of the things that causes burnout is we don't take time for ourselves. And some of that is we don't see ourselves as important as much as seeing what we're doing is important. This person is in a great amount of need. I'm not really that bad off, and so they need my time, they need my effort, they need my energy more than I need it myself. And if I took time away to develop a friendship with someone, well, that's taking away time I'm giving care to someone else. And that's kind of a poor logic, but it's a common logic. And you can see how we fall into that. And so if we don't see ourselves as important, we're not going to take care of ourselves. And if we don't take care of ourselves, we're going to burn out. And so we need to formulate these relationships so we actually are taking care of ourselves, where people do know us and that we're allowing them to take care of us when we need help. When we actually call out and say, hey, I don't know, I just feel really bad today. And do you mind just praying with me? Or do you mind just talking with me? Do you mind just coming over and hanging out? We'll get a coffee, get something. Being able to have those relationships that that you can ask something of them and they'll be willing to give it to you, so that that you're not alone and you're not living this life alone. Another thing that we do is we pull away from people because we're afraid of what they may find in us. And a lot of times, we think of this with the negative stuff, and we have a whole bunch of negative stuff, all of us, thoughts that we have into our head, whether we, wish someone may die, we feel like maybe we should kill ourselves. These lies the enemy puts in our head that we kind of think it's ours, and we beat ourselves up over it. And so sometimes we don't tell that, or just we've made mistakes and some sin or something that we feel like that if someone knew about, they would leave us. All these different things we're afraid of other people knowing. But there's also the good stuff that are in us, that our strengths. We're almost afraid for other people to know our strengths, because if they knew it, they'll think that we're prideful, that they will feel jealous, or whatever it may be. Our visions are too grand. The idea is that we need to trust people to know the real us. Because if we're always trying to hide off these areas of our life that we feel like other people, if they knew that, they would think this or whatever, then we actually are saying, I can't be my true self with you. I can't fully represent who I am to you. And a lot of times we do that with God too. If we can't do it with other people, we can't do it with God. We might say, okay, I know that God, you've forgiven me for this, whatever, but I don't want anyone else to know it, because I feel like that they're going to reject me, and really I feel like that you're not going to take care of me, and this will be just something I just can't handle. And I understand it's not, especially when you're first stepping out and trusting people. You just don't know what they're going to do. A lot of our distrust is because people have hurt us in the past, and so we need to learn how to develop those relationships with people that are always going to be, you know what, I am for you. That sucks, whatever you did or whatever you're thinking. And they might not have the right words to say, but they can say, I'm with you and I'm not leaving you. And that is powerful. That's powerful to say, you know what, you're valuable and I'm going to stick in there. And we do that for other people as caregivers, but we need to let other people do it for us, to realize that, you know what, this is really true. What we're offering other people is something I'm basing my own life out of as well. And I've been doing that for years with myself, being vulnerable to men. As I've mentioned before, I've led men's group for 20 some years, and it's different groups, and I've done better and better over time. But some of these guys, if they wanted to make me look bad, they know how to do it. They have the resources to shut down a lot of stuff because of the crap that I've had in my life. But at the same time, they've seen it and they realize that that's not really who I am, and I don't make those. I mean, just because I have thoughts doesn't mean I act on them, but I'm getting them out in a way that brings health and life, so I can start choosing and actually living out of the good in me. And they call that out of me. They remind me of that, and so I'm actually able to do better and greater things because of the belief of other people in me, and the reminder of who I am, and living that out. I mean, you think about Adam and Eve, what they do when they first sinned. They hid from God, but they're hiding from everything. And then they start blaming one another, and it's breaking relationship. And God, what He does, He brings everything back together. They felt naked, so He gives them clothes or the something to wear. They feel they need to hide and separate. He brings them in. He calls them to Himself. And so God is always trying to restore the relationship. And realize that relationships are so important. Until we actually see people accept us for the things that we are afraid of, we're actually going to hide from God in those areas, because we might be afraid that He's going to reveal it to someone else, and we're afraid of it. And so we need to find people who are going to believe in us and trust in us, that we can work through and process this stuff, to realize that's not who we are. We're actually, the stuff that is really who we are is amazing, wonderful things. And so you look at what people do. We do it all the time with someone who feels like they're not very smart. They're quiet, so that nobody finds out how dumb they feel like they really are. They're not dumb, but they feel like they're that way, so they're just quiet, or they're shy. They feel like that people are going to reject them, so they just pull away from people, and I'm just shy. I can't get to know people. And not to say this is the only reason people are quiet or the only reason people are shy, but that's just something that happens. Someone who doesn't like their appearance, a lot of times will wear baggy clothes to hide themselves in the clothes. And again, not everyone who wears baggy clothes does that, but it's very common. Or someone who feels like they have these huge goals, they might reduce, or huge dreams or vision, might reduce their goals to something more acceptable and more believable. And because we feel like that, if I say that or I do that, people think I'm better. I think that I'm better than they are. And but really, when we look at how God sees us, He sees us as smart. He created each one of us. He gave us the mind of Christ. He's given us the ability to think. I mean, He thinks we're incredibly smart, that He will be willing to entrust Himself to us. He thinks that we're beautiful. He created He defined beauty, and so He knows what it is, and He thinks that we are in His image, and so we are beautiful because we're in His image. And for outrageous goals, He thinks He says with God nothing is impossible. There cannot be any outrageous goals, because with God's mind, nothing is impossible. So we can shoot for the moon and know that God's going to be fighting for us to get there. And so with all of this is really being able to find people that we can share what is even our doubts or our fears and allow them to speak life into it. But they can't speak life into it if we don't tell them what we're thinking. So we actually need to get it out and expose it, bring it out into the light so that we can find the healing that we need to move forward and move into all that God's called us to be. And it's really hard for us to help other people in this way who are really having trouble with relationships, and you know that they need people and they know that they need others in their life. And it's really hard for us to encourage them in that direction if we don't actually have it for ourselves. If we're not actually doing well with relationships and we're not inviting people into our lives, it's hard to encourage other people to be vulnerable when we're not vulnerable ourselves and we're not allowing ourselves to be known. And I believe that you are a safe person. God created you and you're a caregiver, you're powerful, you care about other people, so they can come to you and you will be a safe place. But you need to allow other people to do that for you as well, that allow them to be a safe place for you. And when you share those secret places, you don't actually know how people are going to respond, and so you're taking a huge risk when you're vulnerable. But the thing is, when you actually keep it from other people, you're denying them the ability to be a good friend for you. It's like I was afraid that person was not going to take it well, so I didn't tell them. You just limited that relationship. Now that relationship, maybe that's all you want it to be for that person, but you need to have someone you can go completely intimate with. Whether it should be your spouse and then someone of the same sex, someone that you can, so your spouse isn't carrying the full load of everything that's going on in your life, but you have someone else who's calling you forward to encouraging to be that spouse or the husband or wife that you need to be, or as a single person, that's someone who's calling you forward to purity and waiting for that perfect spouse that God has for you. David did this with Jonathan. He took a risk. If you think at the time when he found out that Saul was trying to kill him, and it was pretty obvious, Saul threw a spear at him, and he's like, all right, Saul's trying to kill me. So he comes back, he finds Jonathan, and says, hey, your dad's trying to kill me. You think about what's going on here. He took a risk because this is his dad. He was making an accusation against his father. But the thing is, if Jonathan was his true friend, he knew that he could handle it. He had to trust Jonathan with the news in order to, otherwise he was going to put a breach in their relationship and their friendship. And when Jonathan says, no, my dad's not trying to kill you, it's not happening, David says, no, really, he is. And he makes an oath, and so Jonathan goes and tries to ask and find out the truth. And he said, okay, I'll let you find out the truth, and we'll meet back here, and you tell me whether your dad's trying to kill me or not. And he actually, and even though David knew he was, he allowed Jonathan to figure it out. Actually took a risk, for Jonathan to come back and say, it's just not happening. But it obviously, Saul showed his hand and did try to, not only try to kill, knowingly try to kill David, try to kill Jonathan in that moment, for trying to protect David, is kind of what he thought. And so they came back, and what you notice is that they renewed their covenant with one another in that moment. And so those areas that we're afraid are actually going to cause a tear in the relationship is actually those areas that are going to cause a strengthening and an even greater intimacy in the relationship. And we need that. And it's after that when David really needed Jonathan to come to him and he strengthened himself, because Saul was out to get him. He was chasing him down. And Jonathan comes like, hey, you're my friend and I value you. And so it's important to have those relationships. And you see David did it really well. I mean, he had a whole bunch of messed up people around him, but he had people around him. And they became his mighty men. They're the ones that had miraculous stories. But if you look at this, who they were the outcast. And David befriended them, and David cared for them, and he became a friend to them, and then they became a friend. They in turn returned that favor back to David. But lastly, I mean, we need to have relationships because that's what God wants to have with us. He wants to have a relationship with us, and having friends in our life, whether it's our spouse or even just other close friends, it actually shows us how to be a friend with God. He wants us to, he doesn't want us just to obey him and, okay, God, what do you want me to do now? He wants me to do this, and you're just becoming a servant or a robot. He wants us to interact with him. He wants us to find out his heart, ask him questions. Read the Bible to know what it is, but you're diving in to find out more of God, and then you're revealing to God more of who you are. And so it's like, this is my passions, this is my desires, and you're working together with God in order to see those things happen. And a lot of times, we've already talked about this, is he'll give us, and when we're talking about trusting God in the process, he'll give us part of where we're going, but then we have to work with him in the process because he wants to build that relationship. He wants us to journey together, to venture with him. And so it's not so much of, I want you to do this, and then we're off on our own and coming back only when we need the next assignment. We're this constant co-laboring with God because he wants us to be a friend with him. And so we have relationships with other people to teach us how to be a friend to God. And that's really what we're going to talk about next week, is how to be a friend to God. And so as we end this week, this lesson, ask God, just what we always do, ask God what those 2 things he wants you to take away from this lesson are. And I really, again, appreciate if you would take the time to send those to me at apc@josiahscovenant.com. Really allow us here to share in your excitement of what God is teaching you. And we just thank you. We look forward to the next and last lesson.
We hope you enjoyed this lesson from Kevin Shorter on the Academy of Powerful Caregivers. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to apc@josiahscovenant.com. Be sure to check out the next lesson on how to pursue God.